Hey YouTube, JoeBoy here. So, One Piece chapter 1042 is out. If you guys haven't checked out that chapter yet, I suggest that you do so because I will be spoiling you. But now that you have, let's begin. This was a chapter that I felt like was far less chaotic than many of those previous, where literally the whole chapter really focuses on three characters and one idea: the defeat of Luffy and the consequences of how that happened. You know, I felt kind of lulled to sleep at the beginning of the chapter when Oda gave us a scene of X-Drake stabbing the leader of CP0. The way that this normally goes is that you have a scene like this and then it becomes relevant like chapters later, right? That's how it normally goes. You have a small scene with various characters and then you come back later. Because this is normally how it goes, it was a major surprise when at the end, there he is, at such a monumental moment. I thought that it was really well done. I think Oda did a fantastic job of making this feel like the final clash with Kaido, and it was going to conclude in some way, which, you know, is Luffy stronger, is Kaido stronger, right? We would find out. But no. I suppose, though, it wouldn't be a JoeBoy review unless there was some kind of hot take. So, here it is. I think that CP0 essentially saved Luffy. This bad luck was actually great luck. Why exactly do I say that? Well, I say that because I think that Luffy was going to lose anyway. Of course, you know, with power scaling, you can never really know for sure. But to me, as I was reading the chapter, I never really got this sense that Kaido was that close to being defeated. Not as close as it appeared as Luffy was to running out of Gear 4. Overall, I think I felt desperation from Luffy throughout the chapter. This was Luffy's last shot, his last attempt at going Gear 4, his final attack, and you can see it in every expression he makes. And while this was taking place, Kaido met Luffy as an equal, countered every move that he made, got in some of his own, all the while there is still that sense of lightheartedness from Kaido. The feeling probably created from the fact that he's still drunk and you have drunk states. Rest in peace, jokes theory. But I did think that it was interesting that from Luffy's perspective alone, this scene seemed very serious. Luffy was not joking around at all. The only person who was Kaido. And maybe that tells you something. Certainly, as I read the chapter, it influenced my perception of how the battle was going. Even before CP0 arrived, I felt as though Luffy was going to lose. So then I think the natural question to ask is why? Like, why did Oda have CP0 involve themselves when they weren't necessary? I believe that this will work out to benefit Luffy. Think about just how ironic that is. CP0 gets a call from the Gorosei, hey, you have to involve yourself in Luffy and Kaido's fight. You must ensure that Luffy is defeated, when, had they not involved themselves, Luffy would have been defeated anyway. But now you have a question. How does Kaido react to winning under these circumstances? We talked about this in the last chapter. What CP0 was planning on doing was very similar to what happened during Kaido and Oden's fight. Someone posed as Momonosuke, Oden was distracted, and then Kaido won. We saw later that Kaido was not pleased about that. He killed the person who did that. And overall, there's a sense of regret that the battle ended in that way. The same should be true here, although some key things may be different. So enough waffling. I think that the weakness of Gear 4 is the time frame that it takes for Luffy to recover. I mean, Gear 4 doesn't kill Luffy. It's just after a certain period of time, his haki runs out and he's not able to defend himself. No future sight, no armament equals a bad time. I think that had this battle played out normally, Luffy would have failed to defeat Kaido, his haki would have run out, and whatever damage he took in this chapter would have paled in comparison to what Kaido would have done to him after that. I think that this type of conclusion as a possibility was alluded to in chapter 1013. That was the first time that Luffy fought Kaido in a 1v1, and at that time as well, Oda tried to create the sense that Luffy would win. But then we cut away from the battle at an important time, and we come back to it at the end of this chapter, and we see Luffy falling off the island. But Kaido says this: "It's been a long time since I've got worked up like this. I've failed. I should have simply cut your head off and announced my victory to everyone, because they'll keep believing that you're going to win, won't they?" Basically, in the heat of battle, Kaido attacked Luffy. Probably Luffy ran out of Gear 4th or ran out of Stamina Haki. Something happened that switched the battle, and Kaido, without intending to, knocked Luffy off the island, rather than defeated him in a way in which it would have been easy to just simply kill him and showcase his trophy. So had Luffy failed to defeat Kaido in this chapter, I think, assuming that he didn't get knocked off the island again, of course he wouldn't from a story perspective, but assuming that didn't happen, then the next step was decapitation. But after CP0's involvement, allowing Kaido to win, aside from the fact that Luffy's obviously not going to get decapitated, I think that possibility is off the table. It could have been. Luffy was, in my opinion, about to lose. CP0 involves themselves, and now Kaido's not going to double tap him. Kaido for sure is going to be distracted. And I think that this will provide Luffy with an opportunity to get back up. Or if not get back up, at least an opportunity to escape. But I think that he will get back up. So in my mind, CP0 has saved Luffy's life. If you had told me that Luffy was going to be defeated and you or I had to come up with some reason as for why Kaido just didn't finish Luffy, this is among the very best reasons that I could even imagine. Because the results of this make sense for every single character that is present within the moment. Cypherpole didn't know that Luffy was about to lose, had received an order from the Gorosei, which hasn't been explained but still makes sense to me. It's an honest miscalculation. For Kaido, we have seen this before. He's gone through this before, and although we don't know the exact reason, I'm sure that a Kaido flashback, we'll get one soon. He has a very good reason to be distracted and angered by the conclusion of this. I'm sure if this leads him into a kind of rage or sorrow or pretty much anything other than cutting off Luffy's head, it works. And then for Luffy, he's always going to try and get back up when it's possible. Is it possible in this case? I think that it's always possible. Giving Luffy time is not a good idea. But I do think that Luffy was able to somewhat defend himself from Kaido's strike, which will prevent absolute crushing defeat. And then as we know, however long it takes now, he will get time to recover his Haki, which we would presume would allow him to continue the battle and potentially finish off Kaido after that. I'm pretty much going all in on the fact that Luffy gets back up, but I don't want to stick my foot in my mouth. There's other possibilities as well. It's maybe this time that's created will give Luffy an opportunity to simply escape. And that could be exciting on its own. I just want you guys to know, and longtime followers of the channel will probably substantiate this, okay? I have been all in from early on in Wano about the Straw Hats being defeated, the raid failing. That's the community thinks of it as a Mord's theory, but I was right there with him for a very long time. It wasn't until maybe chapter 1020, 25, somewhere around there, where I switched teams, where my ideas about how this arc was concluding and the story that Oda was telling changed. But it doesn't change the fact that I would love if the Straw Hats lost. Not that I'm rooting against them, but from a drama perspective, there's a lot of reasons why that possibility excites me. So the reason that I am not speculating this, and the reason that I do not believe that this will happen, is not because of bias against the idea, because I love it. I don't think so. I think Luffy gets back up, and I've argued for a time now how I believe that Kaido would get one more moment, one more victory. Like when Luffy was fighting Lucci, there were several moments in which Lucci won the fight. And eventually you have a very climactic one, where it's there is no way Luffy's getting back up. But then he does. That's how I feel about this. The only thing we're really lacking at this point in time is what will be the Usopp speech. In Enies Lobby, right, Luffy is defeated, he can't even get back up, and it's Usopp, which his speech, his words, which reached Luffy and allowed him to go even further beyond his limits. I expect something similar here, and you guys know that I expect that thing to be Ghost Piece, but it could be something else. Speaking of Ghost Piece, we're at the point here, nut up or shut up. The lanterns are going in the sky now, and so if that thing is going to happen, it's gotta happen now, pretty much, excluding any time for flashbacks. everything seems pretty lined up if you ask me. You have the lanterns go up in the sky. The idea of the lanterns is to communicate with the dead. Luffy is now defeated, so for the dead, or like Ace, to talk to Luffy and inspire him to get back up would, timing-wise, be fitting. But we'll see. I'm excited to see what Oda's going to do, because no matter what, I feel like it's going to be epic. But anyway, we called Kaido's flashback last chapter, and we called it early because it didn't happen. Instead, we got a conclusion, or a semi-conclusion, to the battle, which honestly surprised me. But now it seems like the perfect time for a flashback. Am I jumping the gun or not? Probably, I guess. But I do think that we need to understand Kaido better, because this chapter, it makes you ask questions about Kaido's motivation. This thing is in the title of the chapter. Winners shouldn't need rationalizations. That was the title of the freaking chapter, and it's the part of the chapter that I'm not sure that I understand. The part that I do is that Luffy clearly has reasons to fight Kaido. Reasons that he feels like he has to win. Oda explained a little bit of this at the end of the last chapter. Don't talk to me about your dreams. Your dreams made the people of this country starve. And then in this chapter, Luffy says, I can't lose here. Everyone in Wano will continue to starve and go thirsty if you stick around. This is an explanation of something that we already knew, that I've discussed before, that the allies have a lot more motivation to win. The stakes are a lot higher for them. And I think that in part the moral here is that this has helped them, every single one of them, surpass their limits and equal the playing field. Kaido's response to this is fascinating. But the people of Wano are used to defeat. They're either weak pacifists or content to die for the sake of honor. They're just losers trying to cover the stench of their failures. Luffy says, shut your mouth, the samurai are strong. Kaido responds, a brave face makes them strong. Winners shouldn't need rationalizations. Which are you, winner or loser? I presume that Kaido views himself as a winner. I assume that what Kaido is saying is that he does not have any rationalizations, any justifications for winning. Winners just win. They don't need reasons for why they have to. Which is actually contrary to what most people have speculated since Kaido was introduced as a character. The argument has always been that Kaido has some sort of tragic backstory, which is going to explain his motivation. Basically, like most every character, good or bad in the series, Kaido has something that he is fighting for. We always thought that it would be something. A reason for Kaido to want notoriety, or power, or revenge. The thought was that Kaido had some sort of rough upbringing, something bad happened, his family, where are they? Maybe at some point he had a lover, Yamato exists, or something. And this would tie into his alcoholism and depression. And it would explain his drive. This is a man who is ready to die, but before he can, there's things that he must do. And he has reasons why he must do them. But here Kaido is suggesting that that isn't in play for him. He wins because he is a winner. He doesn't need any rationalization. I think that this is a perfect lead up into a Kaido flashback because it begins to make us ask additional questions and wonder if we truly understand him. And it opens the door for his story to be surprising in various ways. But I want to make this clear, I'm not saying that Kaido doesn't have a tragic backstory. I mean, it's still possible. But clearly he does not subscribe to the ideology of using personal circumstances or desires as a reason to need to or want to win. And I do think that ultimately this will lead to his defeat, because I do subscribe to the belief that having reasons aside from yourself to want to win makes you stronger. Kaido might have won repeatedly over his long career without them, but I think that it might have held him back, if I am interpreting this correctly, which is no guarantee. But this isn't the only thing that was vague from the chapter. I can't be the only one who thought that the member of CP0, the leader of CP0, the way that he acted in this chapter and some of the dialogue around him was very weird. And I think probably important. There is something here that is fuel for later. So let's set the stage for this a little bit by looking at the previous chapter. The leader of CP0, who I'm going to call Mask, because we don't actually have a name for him yet, but Mask is told to eliminate Straw Hat Luffy immediately, and this is what he says. He says, "What are you talking about? Straw Hat is in the middle of fighting Kaido. You can't expect me to interfere in that battle. It's impossible." And then we see his face after this, and to say that he looks pleased would be inaccurate. He seems scared. It seems clear to me that he believes this mission to be suicide, that it will result in his death. And I think that this aligns well with the end of the latest chapter. Mask intervenes in the battle, Luffy loses. The very last panel is of him, and there's an editor note or something that says a rush of emotions, which I attribute to him. Basically, I assume then that he believes, and we all believe, that he is about to be ended right here and right now. He is preparing for that. But I must admit, until the last chapter, I wasn't prepared for this at all. I think that it humanizes Mask in a way that I don't know if I was anticipating, or even if I should have been. He doesn't want to die. He has fears. But the main thing that we want to talk about is at the very beginning of this chapter. X-Drake impales Mask, and Mask asks Drake this: "Why?" Drake says, "This is me enacting my own justice." And Mask says, "I envy you," before he defeats him. This is me enacting my own justice. The way that I interpret this is that Mask is envious of X-Drake for having his own justice, things that he personally believes in and can fight for. We've argued that Mask is essentially scared shitless at being given a mission that he deems suicide, but he accomplishes it anyway. He performs it anyway. And on one hand, this could be seen as devotion and loyalty, as if, he is a believer in what he is doing, and despite the risks, despite his own personal fears, he does it anyway. But this brief conversation with X-Drake has me questioning whether or not he can refuse an order, whether or not he has free will. He's envious of X-Drake because he is a pawn who cannot act on his own wants, his own sense of justice. I've said this many times before, but overall, humanizing an enemy faction, making them sympathetic and complicated, is a normal thing in One Piece. Look at any faction in the story, literally any faction. You'll find both good and bad characters, and almost every character, rather than being pure white or pure black, is some shade of gray. Crocodile, the evil villain that wants to take over Alabasta and kill innocents. A member of his crew is Bon Clay, who is actually one of the greatest human beings that exists on this planet, and I cannot wait for him to come back into the story. But for a time, he was a bad guy, a part of Crocodile's faction. Look at the Marines. On one side, you have Kainu. On the other side, you have Kobe. Two very different people, a part of currently the same faction. You can run on down the list, but there's good and bad pirates. There's good and bad celestial dragons and kings and on and on. And so one thing that we really haven't had up until this point in time, one faction which had not been defined as more vague or having members of that had individuality, was Cypherpole. Particularly CP0. You could generalize them, and based on their actions in the story, the generalizations would be true. Evil pawns of the celestial dragons and the Gorosei, which revel in destruction and mayhem and are bad people. This seems like the start of complicating them. It has me wondering whether or not Mask can actually refuse an order. He's envious of X-Drake enacting his own justice because he can't. I mean, he's a strong guy, right? If he has no real reason to want to be a pawn of the celestial dragons, if he wants to fight for his own cause or do, self-preservation, run and hide, whatever the hell he wants to do, why doesn't he do it? I have several ideas, all of which are intriguing. First off, in order to become a member of CP0, the government and the celestial dragons have to hold something over your head, something that is precious to you. An example would be like Kuma, right? The reason why Kuma joined the world government and became a Shichibukai is because the government captured something precious to him. So in this case, Mask can't refuse an order from the Gorosei, because if he were to do so, they would discover that, and then something bad would happen. Is that in play with CP0? Is that how they ensure loyalty? But I suppose that this tactic wouldn't do a really good job of ensuring loyalty, but there's other technology which potentially could. Speaking of Kuma, Pacifista, Vegapunk worked on Kuma's mind. Basically, he became programming. Are the members of CP0 such as Mask still human? I do think that it's interesting that he almost looks robotic. For years and years when he was first introduced, I just assumed that Mask wore a mask. All the other members seem to be wearing masks too, but we actually get more close-ups of him in this arc, and his mouth moves, so he's not wearing a mask. Maybe it's face paint, or maybe he's cybernetic. Have they been fiddled with to ensure loyalty? Another example of this is with Germa Tech, where we can see that members of Germa 66, the clones, cannot refuse suicidal orders from Judge. At the very least, if something similar is going on with Mask, you can see this is an example of like minds. Both the government and Germa 66 have simultaneously come to similar conclusions about free will being unnecessary. But anyway, I have one more idea, and this one probably has more implications, long-term implications, than any of these others. You know, it's just like, well, this arc, you have examples multiple times where free will is taken from people. Whether it be Momonosuke and his power over Zou, or Tama and her power over animals and creatures. And it just makes me wonder, if there is another devil fruit power similar to Tama's that actually works on regular humans. This would seem to me to be a fitting devil fruit for some kind of in-game villain, the Gorosei being an example of that, or Imu. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But it's clear that there's something here. There's more story to be told about Mask, who he is, and why he does what he does. So I feel like before he gets defeated, although I think Kaido will wash him, before he gets killed, I should say, we need to learn about him. And also, if this is true about him, what are the implications for Rob Lucci? Was there some kind of initiation necessary for Rob Lucci to become a member of CP0, which took away his individuality, his free will, his dark justice? That could be a cool thing. But anyway, guys, that's what I had to say about this chapter. Overall, it was awesome. I think that the build-up and the tension, the fighting itself was amazing. I'm surprised that Kaido's blast that he sent through the island itself didn't explode all the bombs at the bottom. We can actually see Yamato running, so it was a near thing. But all of the build-up and then the eventual payoff was incredible. And I think that right now Oda has cornered himself into a win-win scenario. If Luffy is defeated, I think that the story after that will be amazing. And if Luffy gets back up, I also think that the story is going to be amazing. So we're in winning territory. You know, Oda is just a winner. He doesn't need rationalizations. But I am excited to see exactly what he has planned. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think, whether you noticed something from the chapter that I might have missed. Just share your thoughts. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content. And as always, guys, have a wonderful day.